So today we're here with our very own Enraf Nonius 811 soft shock or radio shock machine. You can see here it's in its carry case. It's a portable machine, so it comes in a case. If we look at the front, you can see the two locks. If we undo the two locks, they do actually lock shut with the keys inside. We open up the shockwave machine. You've got all the shockwave accessories and the machine itself. Okay, so if we start with the shockwave machine, we'll take the shockwave machine out of the case. This is not a particularly heavy machine. And place it down on the front there. Just behind the shockwave machine is the actual shockwave head, which comes out. And we put that down at the front here. If we come to the other side, we've actually got the foot switch. This activates the shockwave itself. Behind the foot switch we have the shockwave head holder. That would be used to place the shockwave head when you're not using it. Behind that there are three individual shockwave heads, and if we start on the right hand side, you've got a 6mm head. A 15mm head in the middle, and then the largest head with this machine is the 30mm head. Just on the far right hand side. And we also have a gauge here, that's for actually making sure that the gap to the shockwave head is the correct distance. Behind that we have a selection of rubber tops. These rubber tops, and there are plenty of them, are used per patient. You should sterilise them between each patient. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and one on the machine makes 10. Behind that we have some mineral oil. Enraf actually supply mineral oil with this machine. If you've read in the literature, some people say using ultrasound gel creates cavitation in the ultrasound gel between the skin, and mineral oil doesn't. And so they supply a bottle of mineral oil, and then in the same little cavity, I can see the keys. These are the keys to the case, for which you get two if you're ever going to lock the case. There's a pouch here the back, and if we open the pouch we should probably find the power lead, which we do, and of course the instruction manual, which contains all the technical data of the machine. Okay, so we have the 811 out of its box now. We've removed the case. As you can see, this is the actual machine itself. If we spin the machine around, we'll see on the back there are several attachments. Working from left to right is the power switch, and then you have the access point for the power lead. That may be different depending on which country you're in. The actual adapter for the shockwave head itself, and then the adapter for the footplate, and a small opening for a fan. If we now take the power lead, you'll see the power lead inserts into the power lead point. The shockwave attaches into the shockwave point. There's a little red dot on the shockwave, and there's a little red dot at the top of the point, and the two need to align with each other for it to go in. If you don't have them aligned, it won't go in. Once you do, it clips into place. And the same for the foot plate. And there's a little red dot. You align the little red dot, and they push into place. Here we click into place. To remove the foot plate and the shockwave head, you actually need to pull back on the metal cover to remove it. So you don't just pull it out, you pull the back of the cover first, and then it comes out. And it's the same on the shockwave head. Don't just try and force it out, it won't. They positively lock into place. You see they actually slide backwards and forwards. We also have here the shockwave head holder. This is quite a heavy unit. It actually weighs nearly 2 pounds or nearly a kilo, so if you want to lose weight from your actual machine in total, this would be a piece to just leave behind. The idea is that the shockwave head sits into the holder and it holds in place, and then the fan on top of the shockwave head can still run, allowing the shockwave head to cool down. Actually, in real life, I've never used this piece of equipment. I just generally lay the shockwave head over the edge of the case and then leave it cooling down. I'll show you that in a bit later on. Okay, so we're back with our Enraf 811. We've left all the leads plugged into it because we're actually going to show you how we use it in real life. This may not be exactly how the manufacturer intended for the machine to be used, but it does seem to work when you're going from place to place and from patient to patient, and it does mean you don't have to unpack the machine onto a trolley to actually use it. So what we generally do is we take the machine with all the leads in, as you can see here, and we place the machine back in its case. Make sure you don't trap any of the leads underneath the machine. All the leads need to come out at the back of the machine here. So you can see the 3 leads coming out into the opening of the case. Now, to pack away the power lead, you put the power lead down and make sure it goes in between the leads so that it's actually out of the way and it's not going to damage any of the leads. And then from there we take the shockwave head and we actually place the shockwave head back in its holder with the leads all out of the way. And there seems to be a convenient little space for the leads to come out in front and behind the shockwave head. From there you can put away the footplate, but just make sure that the lead is actually pointing upwards as you do it, and preferably down towards the middle edge, as you can see here. And then we wrap all the wires into the machine. Like I say, I'm sure this isn't how it's supposed to be done, but it does seem to work. We've not had any problems with ours so far. It looks very untidy. Close the top and you can lock it shut. And your machine is ready to go. By the same token, to use the machine again, just undo the 2 clips. Take out the shockwave head. And you can put it down anywhere, but we can actually even put it on the side of the machine. Take out the footplate. And generally put it down near your foot. We're just going to put it on the table here. Take the power lead. And take the power lead and plug it in. We leave the machine switched on all the time, so the machine will now come on and you're actually ready to treat someone almost immediately. You can leave the shockwave head on the edge of the machine instead of on a holder. And in fact you can actually leave the shockwave head like that as long as the end is off, even with oil or gel on it, until you've cleaned up the patient, and then you can come back and clean up the shockwave head. And you're actually ready to start a treatment almost immediately. Okay, so now we're going to change the applicator head on the shockwave machine. You need to actually take the shockwave itself, clip off the plastic cover. Sometimes they're tighter than others. Take it off. And then the actual applicator, in this case a 15mm applicator, just screws off. It can be a bit tight and they can be a bit difficult to do. It screws off and then you just put it down somewhere safe. Then we're going to choose a new applicator. In this case we're going for the 6mm applicator that you can see here. We need to measure that the 6mm applicator is actually suitable to go on to the shockwave. This is a safety thing. After a certain number of shocks, the end of the applicator deteriorates and it can no longer provide the shocks. To do that, you take the provided spacer, you place it across the end of the adapter, and the two ends should not meet. It's very difficult to see, but there should be a small gap in between the spacer and the actual applicator itself. There should be a gap. If there's not a gap, that head should be replaced. You can probably only just see the gap because it is literally a millimetre. But there must be a gap. If there isn't a gap, don't use that head. Once you've checked to make sure that the head is okay, take the new head and screw it into the end of the shockwave machine. There's a rubber seal just to make sure that it screws in properly. Once it's screwed in, replace the rubber coating on the end of the head. And there you go, you've changed the applicator head. It really is as simple and as easy as that. Here we have the main menu system of the 811. And if we start at the top, there's the Clinical Protocols button. If you press the Clinical Protocols button, it brings you through into the preset protocols on the machine. As you can see here, you have various shoulder protocols on the first screen. If we press the down button, you go to the second screen, you'll see there's actually we flick forward to the third screen, but there's 6 screens of this. You can see what screen number you're on by looking on the top. That's screen 4, screen 6 there. And you'll see various different parts of the body, including on each of the screens. If you want to go back, you can just press the home button on the top. That brings you back to the main screen. If you go back into Clinical Protocols and select a protocol, we'll select the top one. It brings you through into the settings that Enraf have recommended for that particular problem. If you want to change any of the settings, so you can see down on the bottom left it says energy, it's going to be 60 millijoules. If you were to press the 60 millijoules and use the left hand scroll button, you'll see you can turn it up. 60 is the lowest, so you can't go below 60. Lovely. And if you wanted to change the actual number of shocks, you don't press actual, you press target. And then you can turn that up and down. 2000 is a pretty standard number. It has to be selected as you turn it up and down. That's great. And you see there, you're going up and down. Lovely. And then if you want to change the frequency, you go to frequency at the end, and you can change the frequency up and down. Great stuff. I'll show you what the top buttons do on here. If you press the back button, you will go back to the protocols. If we go back into the protocol, that's lovely. If you press the reset counter button, the little button in the middle there, you'll see the counter will reset if you've got any shocks on. If you press count down, the counter will count up rather than down. If you press it again, you'll see it goes back to count down and it'll count down from 2000. If you press the top button, you'll see here you have various different modes. You can have bursts in 4 shots, bursts in 8 shots, and bursts in 12 shots. If we press the top button again, it changes the shots. And then if we go back to the original settings, you'll see that's just constant shockwave all the time. Okay, if we go back to the main menu by pressing the home button, the next one we have down is favourites. If you press the favourites button, these are basically the settings that you can put in yourself, and you can save various settings on the machine as favourites. You can see here we've got horse 1, if you're an equine physio, massage, and on and on and on. If we go back to the home screen by pressing the home button, one of the nice features of the 811 is the information system in the Clinical Protocols. If you press Clinical Protocols and then press the I button next to the Clinical Protocol, you'll see here it brings up a bit of information about the actual treatment. So we've got therapy info, myofascial trigger point in the neck, acute. You're going to do 1 to 4 sessions at 1 per week. Power 60 millijoules. Frequency, burst, or 5 to 10 hertz. applicator head 15mm or 6mm. I personally would never use a 6mm head on the neck, but that's just me. If you press the down button underneath the main box, you see you get the dermatome trigger points and myofascial tone release. First, treat existing trigger and pain points statically with a series of up to 600 shocks per point and series. Begin with a point of the highest priority, and then you finally work over the whole area dynamically. You'll see this in some of the video tutorials, but in essence you do spots where the worst bits are statically, usually 200 spots. You can work your way up from that to 400, maybe 600 shocks. And then once you've done those spots, you go over the whole area with a bigger head in a massaging fashion. If you press the down arrow below the picture, you'll see it actually shows you another picture of trigger points around the scapula. And if you just press the tick button, it takes it back to the main menu. Okay. So the next operation we'll look at is manual operation. If we start on the bottom left hand side, we've got energy here. It goes from a minimum of 60 and does go right up to 185 millijoules. We'll leave it at 60 for the sake of this demonstration. We then want to set the target number of shocks, and as you can see it goes up in hundreds. We actually stopped counting at 250,000 shocks, which I thought was probably well beyond what anybody would use, but it seems you can have pretty much as many as you like. And then the last thing is frequency. The frequency can go down as low as 1 and right up to, in this case, 22 Hertz. The energy and frequency are linked. The higher the energy, the more of a cap there will be on the frequency. So do remember that. You might not be able to have 185 millijoules at 22 Hertz. The machine may just not be able to do it. If we look at the buttons in the centre, the very top button changes the operation from constant, and you can have it in shots instead. So these are burst modes, and you can see there's burst 4 shots, burst 8 shots, and burst 12 shots. If we change that back to constant, we've got the reset counter button in the centre. That's to reset the counter in case you've got some shocks on and you just want to start again. And at the moment the machine is counting up. So actual reads 0 shocks, and we're going to count up. If we press that button, you'll see it changes to 2,200, which is the target, and it will count down from 2,200. We may want to save that as a protocol, and in the top right hand corner you'll be able to see there's a little button. If we press that, it brings us through to another menu, and in that menu we can give the protocol a name. If we press the very bottom, it brings up a keyboard, and we can put in any name we like to save that protocol. Once you've put a name in, we'll just put in some random numbers and letters here. You press the tick on the top right hand side, and that will now be saved as one of your favourites. And if you look at the screen, you can see at the top next to the star is the random numbers and letters we just chose. The final section in the software are the system settings. If we press system settings, you'll see at the top you have language, currently set to English, brightness, which is the brightness of the screen. Use the up and down arrows to change that. Volume, that's the actual bleep volume of the machine, not the volume coming from the head. And then the handpiece counter status, that's the actual number of shocks that the handpiece has given, not the individual shock head. In this case, you're looking at 294,000 shocks. You've got version info at the bottom. You can touch for calibration for your touch screen to recalibrate your touch screen, and you can restore your defaults at the bottom there. If we press the tick, it brings us back to the main menu. Overall impressions of the Enraf 811, having lived with it for many weeks now and used it to treat many patients. This is a great little machine. Of the portable machines, it's probably the most portable. It may be a slightly bigger case, but it's significantly lighter than some of its rivals, and it does move around very well. it certainly has enough power. In fact, at its high end, it's got a lot of power. It's much better, this machine, for its lower end power. It's much nicer on soft tissues. It's much nicer on shoulders, elbows, ankles. It maybe not have the power of some of the other machines for bony heel spurs or plantar fasciitis, but certainly for the soft tissues, the shoulder, the elbow, the ankle, the knee, it's a very capable machine. I have actually used it for bony heel spur and turned it up and used a small head, and it really can get up to some good power if it wants to. It overall is a machine I would definitely recommend, and as you can see, we have one ourselves and we use it day to day, every day.